Have you ever felt most at peace when everything is quiet? Maybe you turn off the music, avoid small talk, and find yourself craving moments where there's nothing but silence, while others fill every gap with noise, conversation, or background sound. You find clarity in the quiet. If this sounds like you, there's a profound psychology behind why silence feels like home. People who find peace in silence aren't antisocial or disconnected. They're tuned in to something deeper. They understand that silence isn't empty. It's full of presence, reflection, and a kind of connection that words can't reach. But before we dive in, if you're enjoying this exploration of human behavior, consider subscribing to Mura Psychology for more insights into the psychology that shapes who you are. Now let's explore the 5 key traits that define people who feel peace in silence. If you recognize yourself here, know that your need for quiet isn't a weakness, it's a form of wisdom.
The first trait is deep introspection and self-awareness. People who love silence are often highly reflective. They don't just live life, they examine it. Silence gives them space to process their thoughts, understand their emotions, and make sense of their experiences. While others distract themselves with constant stimulation, these individuals turn inward. They ask themselves difficult questions. They sit with uncomfortable feelings instead of numbing them with noise. This introspection isn't overthinking, though it can feel that way sometimes. It's a genuine desire to understand themselves at a deeper level. They know that real growth happens in the quiet moments, when you're alone with your thoughts. In silence, they find clarity that chaos can never provide. They notice patterns in their behavior. They recognize when something feels off. They can hear their intuition because there's no noise drowning it out. This self-awareness makes them thoughtful decision makers and deeply authentic people. They're not performing for an audience, they're simply being. The second trait is sensory sensitivity and overstimulation. Many people who seek silence are highly sensitive to their environment. Loud noises, crowded spaces, and constant chatter can feel overwhelming rather than energizing. Their nervous system processes stimuli more intensely than others. What feels normal to someone else might feel exhausting to them. This isn't weakness or being difficult, it's how their brain is wired. Silence offers relief. It's a space where their nervous system can finally relax, where they don't have to filter out background noise or manage sensory overload. In quiet environments, they can think clearly, feel grounded, and exist without constant activation. This sensitivity often extends to emotional stimuli too. They pick up on subtle shifts in mood, tone, and energy. They absorb other people's emotions easily, so being around people, even people they love, can be draining. Silence becomes a form of recovery, a way to reset and return to themselves after the world has demanded too much. The third trait is preference for depth over superficiality. People who love silence often find small talk exhausting and meaningless. They're not interested in surface-level conversations about weather or weekend plans. They want to talk about ideas, feelings, dreams, and the things that actually matter. But these conversations are rare, so they often choose silence over shallow interaction. They'd rather say nothing than fill the air with words that mean nothing. This preference for depth makes them incredible listeners when they do engage. They're fully present. They ask meaningful questions. They create space for others to be vulnerable. But they can't sustain that level of engagement constantly. They need silence to recharge between deep connections. Silence also allows them to connect with themselves on a deeper level. Without distraction, they can explore their inner world, their values, their purpose, their authentic desires. This internal depth gives them a richness that people who constantly seek external stimulation often miss. The fourth trait is comfort with solitude and independence. People who find peace in silence are usually comfortable being alone. They don't need constant companionship to feel secure or entertained. In fact, they often prefer their own company.
This isn't loneliness, it's contentment. They enjoy their own thoughts. They find their own presence soothing rather than boring. This comfort with solitude often develops early. Maybe they were only children. Maybe they learned young that they couldn't always rely on others for entertainment or emotional support, so they became self-sufficient. They learned to enjoy their own company, to find peace in stillness. This independence is a strength. They're not clingy in relationships. They don't lose themselves in other people. They maintain a strong sense of self because they spend time with themselves regularly. Silence reinforces this independence. It reminds them that they're enough on their own, that they don't need external validation or constant interaction to feel whole. The fifth trait is mindfulness and present moment awareness. People who love silence are often naturally mindful. They're not constantly planning the future or replaying the past. They're here, now, fully engaged with the present moment. Silence facilitates this presence. When there's no noise pulling your attention outward, you can sink into the moment. You notice things, the sound of your breath, the feeling of your body, the quality of light in the room. This mindfulness isn't always intentional, it's just how they experience the world. They're tuned in to subtleties that others miss, and silence amplifies this awareness. In quiet moments, they feel most alive, most connected to themselves and their surroundings. This presence also makes them deeply empathetic. Because they're not lost in their own mental noise, they can actually listen to others. They can hold space without needing to fill it. They understand that sometimes the most powerful response is simply being there, in silence, with someone who's struggling. Understanding these traits reveals something important. Silence isn't avoidance or emptiness. It's a space of richness, reflection, and connection. People who seek silence are often the most thoughtful, self-aware, and emotionally intelligent people you'll meet. They've learned that not everything needs to be said, that presence is more valuable than performance, and that peace comes from within, not from external stimulation. Research supports the value of silence. Studies show that silence helps the brain recover from sensory overload and promotes neurological health. 2 hours of silence per day can stimulate new cell growth in the hippocampus, the brain region associated with memory and emotion. Silence also reduces stress hormones and lowers blood pressure. What feels like preference is actually a biological need. Your body craves quiet to function optimally. Throughout history, silence has been valued in spiritual and philosophical traditions. Buddhist monks practice noble silence to cultivate mindfulness. Quakers worship in silence, believing truth emerges when we stop talking and start listening. The philosopher Blaise Pascal said that all of humanity's problems stem from our inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He understood something profound, that silence confronts us with ourselves, and most people find that terrifying. But people who love silence have made peace with that confrontation. They're not afraid of what they'll find in the quiet. If you're someone who feels peace in silence, honor that need. Don't apologize for it. Don't force yourself into noisy environments to prove you're social or normal. Your need for quiet is valid. It's how you recharge, how you process, how you connect with your deepest self. The world is loud enough. It needs people who understand the power of silence. So the next time someone asks why you're so quiet or tries to fill the silence with meaningless chatter, remember that you're not missing out. You're tuned into something they might never understand. You found peace in a place most people are too afraid to look, and that's not a flaw, it's a gift. If this resonates with you, take a moment to sit in silence. Notice how it feels. Notice what emerges when you stop filling the space. That's where you'll find yourself. Remember, finding peace in silence isn't about being antisocial. It's about understanding that true connection with yourself and with life often happens in the spaces between words, in the stillness, in the quiet. And if you found that peace, you found something most people spend their whole lives searching for.